Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Sharlee Dixon, and joining us today is Rainie Howard. Rainie is a highly requested speaker, media personality, best-selling author, and business leader whose global platform has reached over 10 million people. As the author of The Love Habit, Daily Self-Care Practices for a Happier Life and Healthier Relationships, Rainie focuses on helping people transform their lives through spiritual and mental growth while fostering healthy relationships. She also hosts The Rainie Howard Show, inspiring listeners with her empowering messages. We're thrilled to welcome Rainie Howard to the show today to discuss her new book, The Love Habit. We'll delve into her personal journey of self care, explore the practical love framework designed to enhance communication, and uncover effective strategies for reinventing oneself. We are so excited to have Rainie Howard here with us today. Welcome to the show, Rainie.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and just to connect. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, as we begin today, can you share what inspired you to write The Love Habit and how it came out of your personal journey of self care and healing?
Really, what inspired me is just going through a season in my life that was really challenging. I dealt with depression and anxiety. I was just dealing with so many changes. And in dealing with the changes in my mental health, emotional health, and even my physical health, I had to step back and do some research on how I can work on healing myself because at the time I was seeking out help and I wasn't getting any real answers to what was going on with me. I was going to my health physician, I was going and seeking help from therapy and everything. And I just felt lost. And you know how sometimes you can look for answers on the external world and outside of yourself. I needed to do the internal work on me
Absolutely.
and really get to know me in order to find the answers that I was seeking and the health and healing that I desired for my life, which led me to practicing the love habit before I even knew it was a book and before I even, wrote about it, but just a daily practice of it and living it and really connecting with other people, clients, in addition to other professionals who had witnessed the same results from working on their mental, emotional, and physical healing. So it has really been a journey and a process of not only my own personal self care, but also working with others in addition that led me to even writing the book.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with you in that a lot of transformation, it has to start from within. We can get things from outside and, not to downplay those, therapy is excellent, but a lot of the
Yeah.
healing has to really start from within.
Yeah,
Right.
because what I and I agree because even like with me, like I still utilize therapy and other outside resources, but in order to even be fully effective in those areas and utilizing those, I needed to know me. I needed to have that self-awareness in order to have the right answers and about myself when it comes to speaking with my therapist or speaking with other professionals who are asking me what's going on when I don't do the work on me and really, have that self-awareness, I can't really direct those professionals to help me either. So,
Absolutely.
yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a minute ago, you mentioned your mantra, love, which stands for learn, optimize, validate, and experience. That's resonated with so many, and me even as well. Can you explain how this framework helps individuals, how it enhances communication, how it helps people set boundaries, even cultivate self love?
Yeah, and so throughout the book, I talk about just facing some of the issues and learning about yourself, which brings me to the first L, learn. It's like you got to learn how to listen to yourself, listen to your own emotions in your mind, your body, and know what is going on within you. And so that's the discovery of yourself. So it starts with L. And then O is to optimize, which means once you learn yourself, you have that self awareness Now you can begin to optimize your daily practice by knowing what works for you. And for some people, that may be meditation or learning how to incorporate that in their daily tasks or taking a walk, exercise, and moving their body, which is also a way of helping them to cope whatever it is that they're dealing with. So as they optimize and begin to practice specific techniques and habits, which I talk about in the book, that help them individually, then that leads us to the V, which is validate. You want to get to a place where you can validate yourself. Because I think a lot of times what we do is we look for outside validation where we want other people to tell us that we're enough, or we want other people to, reinforce our value. But really, we got to know our own value and we have to validate ourselves first. And so, in doing that, knowing that you are enough, knowing that you can stand in who you are and thrive in your life, in every area of your life. And finally, the last acronym is E, which is all about experiencing. And you want to begin to experience the life and the emotions that you desire to have in your life by practicing these daily techniques. And so, yeah, so that's the acronym of the love habit that I talk about in the book, which is also helping individuals when it comes to their relationships.
Absolutely. And honestly, as you were describing it, it really sounds like you almost need to reinvent yourself. Like you need to learn who you are and then even reinvent that new person. What steps do you recommend for someone looking to break old habits and craft the new life that they really enjoy and desire?
So, first, I would say when it comes to practicing the love habit, because a lot of times what it is we desire certain things in our life, whether it's goals we want to accomplish, we, want a new job, new position, a better relationship. And all of those things are things that, we're not currently experiencing. That's why we desire it. And it requires us to create the change in our life first before we can manifest that change in our lives. And reinventing yourself is all about practicing the habits that align with the life and the relationships and all the things that you desire. And so just practicing you being that person that is aligned to what it is you desire to have is very important. Because a lot of times people are looking for relationships to complete them versus relationships, real healthy ones are there to complement who you already are as a person. And so knowing how to align yourself as that healthy person who is worthy and deserving of a healthy relationship requires you to be in alignment with what does that look like for you to be in that place of I am worthy and I'm aligned for this thing that I'm desiring.
Right.
Right. And you really mentioned earlier a lot about self awareness as the perfect place or the right place to really start. Because again, if you're not really self aware about you and the things that you desire or who you really are, who you want to be, then you really can't move forward. One of the things as a social worker or the tactics that I use or have used in the past is journaling. Can you talk to us a bit
Mhm.
about self awareness, maybe using the practice of journaling within that? And is that something that you would suggest to people to help identify needs and maybe even establish healthy relationships with themselves and others?
Completely, yes. I love to journal and I'm a big journal. Like I've been writing and that really what led me to writing my books. It started with me journaling. So I am a huge advocate when it comes to journaling because it is a great way to not only get out your thoughts and to detox your mind, but it's also a great way of finding out what is really inside. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Because a lot of times we're just living life and we're not even aware of how we feel. And so asking the right questions, journaling the right questions and really practicing listening within and getting out those thoughts is a great way of therapy and healing. And I do talk about that in a book as well because I do think that we're not aware of like our thoughts and what we're dealing with. And one of the things that I think it's a practice called mind dumping, and it's like a form of journaling. Like if someone is dealing with depression or they're angry, a certain situation didn't go the way they wanted to go, but just to like write out everything that's in you, the thoughts, the anger, the emotions, just to put it all on paper, just to release it, which is a really good way to begin to cleanse yourself of some of the emotions that may be bottled up or you may have been suppressing. It's just like asking yourself questions and just really getting into the root of your thoughts. I think it's a great way for healing in the process of having that technique.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. But you mentioned something just at the end that I was going to ask you next. So, if somebody
Mhm.
is not familiar with being able to take what's in their mind and put it onto paper, where do they start? Are there certain prompts that they should use? Like, how do you get into it and really find it effective?
Yeah, there are some people who are more talkers than writers, and I also recommend the technique of just recording some of your thoughts. Maybe you need to just speak out what it is that you are holding inside, just to get it out and to get clear. Because maybe writing isn't your form, but maybe just speaking it out. And this is something that you can have, and most phones have a voice memo, and so
Yep.
I think that's a great way of speaking out some of your thoughts. But another thing is, which I use my voice memo for a lot, is affirmations and just I like to speak out some of my affirmations in the voice menu and replay them as a reminder just to stay focused on the thoughts and the goals that I want to focus on in my life at that time. And we're not always aware that we are consuming so much. We're consuming so many things from the media, information, and we're filled with all of these thoughts and opinions. And sometimes it's just best for us to release and to detox and to just get it out in whatever form that works best for an individual. Yeah, but I think it is good to find a way, even if you don't want to speak out your thoughts or record them, but find a trusted friend, a therapist, someone that you know that you can do some talk therapy or some way of being able to get it out. I think it's so important.
We'll be right back after word from our sponsor.
Continuing education is both a requirement and a learning opportunity, but finding the right CE provider can be challenging. AATBS, a triad company, offers continuing education for psychologists, social workers, marriage and family therapists, counselors, and behavior analysts. CE courses are available both individually and as part of our new All Access Pass. All Access Pass provides a library of over 250 unique courses. That's more than 800 hours of CEs, with new courses being added every month. As a special offer, Behavioral Health Today listeners can save 15% on CE purchases. Visit us at aatbs.com/BHT and enter promo code BHT15 during checkout. That's aatbs.com/BHT. Check out our library and check off your CE requirements today.
I absolutely agree with you. And you make a really good point. I had never really thought about recording myself saying certain affirmations or things to myself. I actually work with my own therapist, Truth Moment. I do a lot of self compassion type work, and I have a compassion mantra. And I never really thought to record it to myself so that I could play it back when I need it. So thank
Yeah.
you for that idea because I really hadn't thought about that. But having it easily accessible in my phone, I do think will come to be a positive thing and be helpful.
Yeah. Very, very helpful.
So
Yeah.
one of the things that a lot of people deal with in their journey towards self-care is people pleasing. And from my understanding, it is a big theme in your book as well. Why do you think so many people struggle with it? And how can someone begin to break free from this pattern to set stronger boundaries?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough one. I think we're conditioned to be people pleasers, from babies. And like just knowing like, oh, when you're, a child and you smile, the parents smile back, or if you're crying, they're telling you to stop, we're kind of
Mhm.
conditioned to, do what we know is pleasing to others. And we become professional people pleasers.
Yeah.
And if we're not careful, it can deplete us of our self-esteem. It can be exhausting, it can be stressful, and we can get to a place where we don't even know what we like or what we want. We don't even know ourselves because we're so conditioned to focus on everyone and everything outside of us, which is really one of my biggest challenges when I was going through my season of depression. I realized that I had been so focused on, you know, being a mom and wife and a business owner and making sure everybody's good and doing this and doing that and making sure this is happening. I didn't have any me time. I wasn't practicing any morning routines. I was just getting up and moving and grinding and working.
Yep.
And so I had to learn to stop. I had to learn to practice a morning routine that led me to holistic healing. But just being a people pleaser was the root of that was driving me to constantly just do. And I was also raised to believe that you should put others before yourself.
Yeah.
And, and it sounds like, such a worthy cause and a great, way to serve, but you don't realize that in doing that, you are practicing ignoring yourself. You're
Mm.
practicing just living a life where you're not even aware. You have no self-awareness. I remember, around that time when I was in that challenging season of my life, I remember someone asked me, what do you enjoy doing? What do you do for fun? And I could not think of one thing. And it really bothered me that I couldn't think of nothing that made me happy or that I did for fun because I felt like I was so focused on work and
Mhm.
serving and giving and I just had to learn just that just was not a healthy way to live my life.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think that's why we get so caught up in it, but there are healthier ways to serve people and have great relationships, be a great parent and spouse without depleting yourself and being a professional people pleaser. You know, you,
Absolutely.
you so yeah.
And your story is I'm just, it was speaking to me because you are definitely not the first that I've heard, especially, as women, the story of we put everybody else first, the, family, the spouse, the children, the business stuff. We're trying to do everything else for everyone else and really just trying to figure out who you are and what you are and what you want out of life at the end of all of that instead of in the beginning of it all.
Yeah, exactly. And really being a parent, you don't know how to do that. You think,
No, we really
okay,
don't.
I'm dedicating my life to this child and
No. Yeah.
so it's challenging.
Yeah, and like you said, we do the things as the parent, like, okay, let's make our child happy and all these other things, but
Mhm.
we've also got to start with ourselves first too.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly.
So speaking of relationships, what are some of the most common red flags in relationships that people tend to overlook, and how do you suggest they handle these situations?
I think some of the red flags start with our own personalities that bring on and welcome on some unhealthy behaviors and in relationships.
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, I would say if you have a hard time saying no, and that kind of goes in line with being a people pleaser, and someone asks you to do something and you feel bad, you don't want to say no. So you say, yeah, sure, but you really don't have the time and really don't want to do it, but you do it anyway. You can attract, certain relationships that see you as, oh, this person is always going to say yes because you're teaching people how to treat you in your relationships. And so this is the thing that a lot of people are unaware of, but instead of just, I don't want them to be mad at me, so I'm going to say yes, you're not realizing that you're teaching this person that you might be a pushover or you might be someone that they can use if they need to, and you're not even aware of that. And so when we're aware that we teach people how to treat us, when people are doing us wrong in our relationships, instead of just being angry and upset with the person and blaming the person, but to stop and say, what am I doing that is sending a message to say it's okay to do this to me or to treat me this way? What boundaries am I not putting in place that is creating this type of relationship in my life? So that's something that I try to practice because I was one of those people in the past where it's like when someone was doing me wrong, I was a victim and like, woe is me, and why would they do this? And so I've gotten to a place where, don't get me wrong, there are some people that are just wrong and they're just going to just do things, and you got to be aware of that. But I had to also learn like what part am I playing in this relationship that I may need to adjust and reinvent myself in order to have a more healthier relationship with this person. And me asking that question and having that self awareness around how I could be influencing some of the behavior in the relationship, it is life changing and has really helped me to have better relationships, to be more direct in conversations with people, to have more boundaries. And ultimately, it's best and it serves not only me, but also the other person so that they know, like, this is what you're going to get in this relationship, and these are my boundaries.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another kind of red flag that I've seen in friends' relationships is that they may move too fast, and maybe the other person isn't ready for where it goes or how fast that it may move. How important is it then to observe and not necessarily absorb? Can you talk to us about what that means, what that looks like, and then how does someone cultivate discernment in relationships while still trying to remain or create boundaries?
Yeah, I think so. The first question, how can some observe instead of absorb, becoming that type of relationship? Yeah, I think it it's good to be aware and to pay attention to what's going on. I think a lot of times in relationships we take things personally. And so then we begin to absorb and we begin to allow that situation to impact us. But when you are just observing, you're not taking it personal. You've separated yourself from, oh, it's about me. And you're just more aware, you're just becoming more aware of the actions of that individual, some of the things they're saying, what they're doing. Like you said, when it comes to moving too fast, for example, let's say a romantic relationship, and we've all known people who you like, you just met this person and you're already engaged. What's going on? Slow down. So a lot of times that's because they're really excited. They have all this energy because in the beginning of anything new is exciting, right?
Mhm.
You get a new car, you get a new house, you get a new man, a new woman, whatever. It's exciting. So you have to know that this is the beginning. Of course, you're going to be excited, but it's best that you take your time, that you're observing things, you're not taking things personally. You're not like, oh, they're so in love with me. No, you're just getting to know that person. And when you do that, you are able to gradually build on the relationship or even just see if this relationship is for you. And that's the best way to do it, to gradually build on the relationship and get to know a person versus moving too fast and finding yourself wrapped up in this individual and then you're heartbroken because it doesn't work out. So I think it's very important just to take your time and understand that it's normal to be excited about it, but it's also important that you don't allow that excitement to absorb your view of the real situation and what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so a lot of this really does sound like is just really creating boundaries with yourself and with others. So, in both personal and professional relationships, boundary creation is not an easy thing. So, tough conversations absolutely have to happen. What types of strategies do you recommend for handling that difficult type of dialogue while you're prioritizing that self care? Like, what does that look like for someone?
I think really what's important is understanding how you want to show up in the relationship and asking yourself, who do I need to be in this relationship? And how does this look like a healthy relationship with me? And once you know exactly who it is you are to be in this relationship in order to have a healthy relationship, then you begin to understand the importance of boundaries. Because I think what's holding people back from having healthy boundaries, a lot of times people don't even see how they are very important and how they shape not only the relationship for the better, but also your identity and your self-worth and just how you want to show up in that relationship. And knowing the importance of that, it's just like anything that you care about that's important, you're going to prioritize it. You're going to make sure that even when it's challenging, like having the tough conversations and letting that person know, I appreciate your offer to, allow me to take this weekend trip with you, but I'm not comfortable right now, and this is not the best time for me. Because a lot of times we don't want to hurt other people's feelings and we don't want them to be mad at us.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things that I tell my clients I have to get over and learn, and I still have to practice this, but not allowing I don't want to hurt I don't want them to be mad at me to get in the way of me having a healthy boundary or to get in the way of me having the direct conversation that need to take place in order to have a more healthy relationship with that individual. And so knowing like if they're going to be mad at you or whatever, then you don't take it personally. That's on them and not on you. You are creating the boundaries to protect yourself, to guard your heart and make sure that you're protecting your peace. So instead of looking at it from, oh, I don't want them to be mad at me, looking at that as me doing this is allowing me to have a healthier relationship and to show up as the person that I desire to be in the relationship, which is going to cultivate more self worth for me, which is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, again, it seems like, again, creating new boundaries or establishing boundaries, figuring out what you want, and then also creating new habits is really a central focus of the love habit. What advice do you have for people who struggle with the early stages of building new habits, establishing those boundaries, especially around self love and personal growth? Because it's not easy to go from being extreme people pleaser to these are my boundaries and it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say, for one, like I say, that self-awareness is number one. Because a lot of times the reason why you are people pleasing, you're struggling, with low self-esteem, low self-worth, depression, all of these things is usually because you are lacking the self-awareness. You are so consumed with everything else and everyone else that you aren't aware of what's best for you. So, starting with learning about you, listening to your body, understanding the importance of, like, for instance, I need this amount of rest in order to function at my best each and every day. So, I have to say no to my friends who want me to stay out all night or whatever. Just knowing these things about yourself, knowing the importance of, oh, I feel proud of myself when I do this, when I keep my promise to go to the gym or whatever, what knowing what lights you up, what gets you excited, what makes you feel proud of you. These are things that will help you to have more self-awareness and and the more you build this, the more you have this confidence to where you don't need other people's validation as much as you did before. you begin to see that, wow, I am really feeling good within my own skin. I don't need another person to compliment me. I don't need all of these external things to feel like I'm worthy. But I'm feeling that on the inside because I'm pouring into me. And so the more you pour into you, the more you prioritize you, the more you don't need those things. And so when it comes to having the tough conversations and not needing people to like you, it's really because you like you, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
when you like you, it's enough and you don't have to get that from others. And so I think that's the main foundation when it comes to getting started and doing this type of work is really working on your relationship with yourself. Because really, your relationship with yourself impacts every relationship that you have.
Mhm. I completely agree with you. And like you mentioned earlier, making sure that you teach people how to treat you. But again, you've got to know how you want to be treated before that's ever going to come into play.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. You talk a lot about energy vampires and the importance of identifying them in your life. How can people recognize and deal with individuals who drain their energy?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, when it comes to energy vampires, whether they're friends and they can also be family, you
Mhm.
know, it's important to know how to not only set the boundaries, but know the limits that you have with each individual. Now, there are some people who you're like, I love this person. I want them in my life, but they can be toxic. They can be negative sometimes. And I know because I know this, I have to limit the amount of time I'm spending with them, but I want them in my life. So instead of me spending a whole weekend trip with them, I may just go by their house and we may have 2 or 3 hours together. And then I know it's time to go because they're going to start getting on there, rattling, or negativity. And I got to go
Yep.
after that. And then there are people who that this person is just completely toxic. Every time I'm around them is drama, negativity. I have to completely distance myself, maybe take a break from them. Or if it's too toxic to where they can become abusive or anything, you may want to consider no contact at all. And so it just depends on the individual and the relationship that you desire. Um, but like I said, and there are some people that you can tolerate, and you have to know, this is my limit with that person,
Mhm.
no more than 3 hours. We can't have a weekend trip together, but I can spend, half of, afternoon with them or something like that. So it just depends.
Absolutely. And again, it is about creating those boundaries and really knowing yourself and where that time needs to end. And it's kind of interesting that you said that. My mom used to say sometimes we have to love people from afar. So it
Yes,
sounds like that's pretty
and
much
the
a lot
fact
of
and the
it.
fact that yeah, exactly. And the fact that they're energy vampires, that means they're sucking out your energy. They're depleting you. And so you being aware this person drains me. So you got to know the limits. You got to know, after a certain time, I start to feel really, really, I gotta go. I gotta know my distance,
Mhm.
and have my boundaries in place and know my limits for each individual. And like I said, some people may have to completely cut off an individual that is just too toxic or too abusive. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, shifting gears just a little bit, how do you envision the love habit helping readers break free from cycles of toxic relationships? And what do you hope the overall reception of the book will be?
the main thing when it comes to the book is people learning how to love themselves and the way that they love their self and the practice of love, the habit of love is going to not only create more loving and healthy relationships, but it's also going to shine a major light on toxic relationships.
Mm.
And it's going to really show you more than ever, I gotta leave this situation. And I have some clients that tell me, they start a relationship and they're like, you know, everything seemed great in the beginning, and then they just became a whole nother person. And what I tell them is a lot of times you don't see who they really are in the beginning, but the red flags and the warning signs are louder and brighter to see when you have a practice of love, when you have the practice and that is in the book is going to create just a life and a normacy around being healthy to yourself and attracting more healthy relationships.
Absolutely. So, looking at everything that we've discussed about the book, who is the book for? Is it for a certain set of people? Who is it for?
It's basically for anyone who wants to have a happier life and healthier relationships. So anyone who may find themselves struggling with their relationships, whether they be work relationships, I have a chapter that talks about prioritizing yourself at work, knowing how to communicate, when it comes to people who are in corporate America or other people in different work and business industries, in addition to family relationships, friendships, and again, romantic relationships. So anyone that's just struggling in relationship, I think is perfect for them, and because it really shines the light on how the relationship they have with their self and really knowing their self is impacting all of those other relationships. And so it's unveiling what's hidden that a lot of people aren't aware of when it comes to healthy relationships.
Absolutely, because these are not necessarily things that are taught readily in most families or in many families that I know of. These aren't things that are necessarily taught. We aren't really taught how to create boundaries, really how to establish them, and then keep them going throughout all of our relationships, not just personal relationships, love relationships, but maybe even friendships, or like you mentioned
Yeah.
just now, at work as well.
Yeah, because sometimes, people think that, well, because they're working a job and they're working to get paid, that they should tolerate toxic treatment or, bad behavior or bad treatment, even at work, which is there's a way that you can have those tough conversations, and I give examples of that even when it comes to having those conversations with people in leadership who may not have as healthy relationships as they could be when it comes to the work environment.
Absolutely. Okay, and as we wrap up today, what final advice can you offer our listeners who are feeling stuck in those toxic relationships and are struggling with self-esteem, self-worth, and being able to create boundaries?
My advice to whoever is dealing with that is to make a priority to begin to do the work on you. Begin to prioritize you. Because a lot of times, if you're in this type of relationship, your main focus is that person and what they're doing or what they're not doing, or, maybe complaining about it and upset about it. And really, you're not aware that it's really impacting you, it's draining you, is causing emotional baggage within yourself. And as you do the work on you, it's going to really help you in those relationships. So prioritize yourself. That's my advice.
Absolutely. Thank you
Yes.
for that. Randy, where can listeners learn more about your book, The Love Habit, Daily Self-Care Practices for a Happier Life and Healthier Relationships? And where can we learn more about your work?
So the book is available now anywhere books are sold. You can get it on Amazon. They shipping out pretty fast. But you just type The Love Habit by Rainie Howard and it could come right up. You can also connect with me on my website at rainiehoward.com. And I'm also on social media as well. So I would love to connect with the listeners who are tuning in right now.
Awesome. And I also hear that you've got a podcast. What is the name of your show?
So my show is the Rainie Howard Show, and it's also on YouTube and all podcast platforms. But yeah, I basically talk about some of these same topics: relationship topics, self health, personal development. So go ahead and tune in to the Rainie Howard Show.
And I will definitely be doing so. Thank you so
Yeah,
much, Rainie. I
thank
really
you.
appreciate being with you today.
Thank you so much, Sharlee, for having me. I really appreciate this conversation. This was great, and I'm looking forward to staying connected.
Definitely. And thank you to our listeners for taking the time to join us. Before we go, listeners, we'd love your help. Please leave a review and share the podcast with a friend. By spreading the word, you help us grow and reach more people, allowing others to discover the valuable insights shared in each episode. Thank you so much for being such an important part of the Behavioral Health Today community. As always, the resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.